I'm going to speak now to a friend of yours, Larry Kudlow, the director of the President's National Economic Council. Larry, welcome back. So good to see you.
Thank you.
We did have a good economic growth number, that Q2 number, 4.1%. It's hard to argue it was anything but a good win for the president. But when you take it apart, was this sort of just a temporary burst of buying ahead of the implementation of the president's tariffs?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, the basics of this number were consumer spending and business investment. Those are the basics of any number, C plus I, to put it in economic terms. It's doing terrific. It's rising by better than 4%, as was the overall. And I know some people have tried to downgrade this by saying about the tariffs, buy ahead of tariffs. By the way, we don't know that. There's a lot of theories about that. I'm glad to see exports rising, whatever the reason. The biggest thing that nobody's talked about in terms of these smaller issues is inventories. Inventories fell by, I think, $25 billion. That's very unusual. It took at least a percentage point off of GDP. But these things jump around a lot. The heart of this report, as I said, consumer spending, business investment are on a tear. Business investment is on a tear, which was really what our tax cuts were designed to do.
And your deregulation.
And the deregulation, thank you, and the energy. And by the way, the president's attitude, the war against business is over, the war against success is over, the war against energy is over.
But then he's got a trade war, Larry. He's got trade disputes, even with some of our allies, and that's the thing that makes people worried, that everything you just laid out is going to go up in smoke. Can you promise that NAFTA will be done ahead of the November races, that you will get that agreement in principle to actually be a hard agreement with the Europeans?
On Mexico, just to pinpoint that, we're making very good progress. And something good may be announced in the not too distant future.
By September?
The biggest one was the European Union. I'm just waiting for you to get to the EU, where I had a role, and POTUS was unbelievable, and President Juncker was unbelievable.
Those tensions this week.
More than that. I mean, yes, I think that's true, but also the EU, President Juncker, comes right out of the gate saying, we will buy a ton of your soybeans, which will help ameliorate the China problem.
Can't buy that. European nations and private businesses would have to.
Indeed, and I think they will. And I think there's a lot of momentum for that. So this wasn't an actual transaction.
This is a promise to do something in the future.
We will have an actual transaction.
On what?
Guaranteed. Starting out right away with soybeans, beef, and liquid natural gas, LNG, which is a huge topic.
But the European Commission says that agricultural products are absolutely not up for negotiation. You're saying they are.
They will be part of the negotiations, but I don't want to get in the way of their domestic issues, okay? We are going to be very accommodative. They will be very accommodative. Again, if ag's not part of it, what are soybeans doing? Right. What's beef doing? In the final document that was signed by both, we talked about opening markets for farmers and for workers. So, no, I don't buy that.
What's the timetable on this?
Immediately. We're starting immediately.
Are you going to be negotiating this?
We started
or is
immediately.
The trade representative?
I'll be involved. Bob Lighthizer is the key guy, absolutely. We will be starting immediately. We'll be setting up a layered process to examine all the different areas. Remember,
can you get this by September? Because we still have the Commerce Department saying they're reviewing whether to put these auto tariffs on or not.
That's fair enough, and they are reviewing.
That's a knife hanging over your neck.
Well, I don't know if it's a knife. We'll see how that study comes out. The president asked for it, and the Commerce Department will give it.
We'll see that 20% tariff on autos?
I don't want to get ahead of anything in this game, Margaret, as you well know. All I'm going to say is the EU story is moving ahead very rapidly, and I think that, by the way, puts China in a very difficult position. China is, I think, being isolated. I don't know if they realize it or not. I assume they do. Not only is the EU and the U.S. coming back together, as I said before, I'm looking forward to a deal on Mexico, and I think a deal with Canada is out there.
But so as you say, this is really
all
about
of a sudden,
China. But if China's not coming to the table, then what are these tariffs accomplishing?
The tariffs have moved a lot of people to the table, including the European Union, including Mexico. Well, we'll see about that. As I said before, a key point here is that all of a sudden the Chinese are being isolated. China, by the way, asked the EU to do a trade deal. The EU said no. The EU said to us, we would much rather have a deal with you, the United States, and that's why President Trump and President Juncker's meeting was so important, and the process is beginning immediately. So this is very good news in my judgment.
So you are a Reagan-era conservative.
I am.
Doesn't it send shivers up your spine when you start talking about giving aid bailout to farmers, when you start talking about deficits now growing more towards $1 trillion in 2019, when you start talking about trade wars here? Isn't there a less destructive way to get to the growth you want to see?
Well, look, first of all, lowering tax rates and rolling back regulations and opening up energy is a great way for growth, and that's what we're seeing. And President's program, we've only been doing this, I guess, 5 Trump quarters. We're almost at 3%, 3.1 in the first half and 4.1 in the second quarter. It's working. It's all working. People said we couldn't do it. So you're telling farmers the
pain's worth it.
So that's one point. No, I'm not telling anybody. I'm not for pain. I'm for prosperity, as always. But here, President Trump has said he wants to end tariffs. He wants to end non-tariff barriers. He wants to end subsidies. And he is a free trader. But sometimes you have to target tough tariffs to do so, okay? And that's what he's doing, and I think it's beginning to show some success. It's only been 6 months since he's been on this track. Yep. So no, and regarding the deficit, let me say this. The increase in growth is going to be a big factor in lowering the deficit. Mm-hmm. Even the CBO numbers, and they've never agreed with us on taxes and dynamics.
Yeah, but Mick Mulvaney put out a number this week that I was referring to on the $1 trillion.
Yes, but look, behind that number, in the short run, do we lose some revenues to invest in our economy? Absolutely. Even the CBO numbers show now that the entire $1.5 trillion tax cut is virtually paid for by higher revenues and better nominal GDP.
Larry,
These are all good things, Margaret.
We have to leave it there because I'm out of time.